Here's what your eye contact during a speech is really saying about you. And if you're not looking at your audience, or if you're just staring into their souls, you're doing it horribly wrong. So in today's video, I'll give you the exact eye contact theory I've used to help me speak in front of 2,000 people with ease, receive standing ovations, and win public speaking competitions. Now look, if you're just staring into the souls of your audience, there's a problem. If you're just looking at the back of the wall, not looking at them, not engaging with them, just at the back of the wall and just reciting your speech, there's a problem. And now I'll tell you where the problem lies in this video, and we'll address the problem. I'll tell you how we fix it, and then I'll give you some practical tips on how we can do that. So let's first talk about the problem. Okay. What we want is simply how we would speak at the dinner table when we are talking to our family or friends. We speak with absolute comfort. We don't have to think about how we say or how we look when we say it. We don't have to think about what we say or how we look when we say it. There's no real pressure to perform or to act a certain way or to deliver to some standard. And so what we ideally want is to replicate that. The same way when we deliver a speech or a presentation at a boardroom like this, we want to speak with that same level of comfort as the dinner table. And so there's a few things we have to replicate here. But largely, the problem stems from us using words which we're not comfortable saying. So if you have to use these words which make you sound smarter, words that you have to remember, you're doing it wrong. If you have to remember how to pronounce the word, you're doing it wrong. We want to speak at a level which is not necessarily simplified or dumbed down, but one which we are comfortable at. And oftentimes that is a conversational level. We're not going to be speaking with some high, far too sophisticated English. Oh, what does the word surreptitious mean again? We don't want that. We don't want to be spending our brain points and our energy thinking about what a word means or how to pronounce a word or if we're using it in the right context. We want to focus and direct all of our attention and energy into connecting and above all, speaking to the audience. So what this looks like is, I have a good breakdown here. We don't want, what's the word again? All right, so we're using words that are far too big. This is often where the problem stems from. I'll draw a little leaf here, a plant. These are where the problems stem from. So we're using words that are far too big and sophisticated. All right, sophisticated is even a far too big of a word for me to be using in this video. And then we're trying to recite. We're trying to remember our speech word for word and recite it. And I've often pointed out that yes, maybe if we can write the perfect speech with all the right words and the right grammar and the right message, it might be better than one with bullet points, one where we prioritize natural flow. It could be better. I'll give you that. But that better writing doesn't mean anything to your audience because they can get far more from it, far more value from your speech if only you spoke to them. It's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. That's often a phrase which gets thrown around all the time in this space, right? In the public speaking space. And it's very true. So in terms of reciting, this could be, better written than bullet points, right? But the reason we feel this need to recite and remember everything word for word is because we don't necessarily know what's important in the speech. Not everything, it's kind of like when you have to study, there's a bunch of material we need to remember, and then we go and we highlight the whole page. The whole page is pretty important. but it simply stems from the fact that we don't know what exactly is important. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. You know, that's important there. And so is that. Everything else, if we know those 3 points, everything else falls into play. And that leads me to this, which is, in our speech, we don't want the better one, quote unquote better one, memorized one, recited one, word for word one. What we want, similarly to what I'm doing in this video, few bullet points guide me, and I use my knowledge and my understanding to bridge the gaps between them. So we need to determine what are the important points in our speech, in our story, in our presentation. So I've made this example before. If we have a few important points, simply it's how there's 3 important facts in this page we have to study here. There's 3 important points in our speech. Let me just check if this is in frame. Oh yeah, it's perfect, bro. There's 3 important points in our speech. So this could be the beginning. Like I always say, start your speech off with a story. At the end of the story, there can be a realization. You know, your transformation, / transformation. That's a pretty important part. Another important thing could be the message. You know, that's your actual, or maybe your data, or your groundbreaking study, you know? And the ending is obviously very important. Your ending, your conclusion, you want to end off being memorable. And the way we do this is we use Roman rhetoric to highlight the points, to make these even darker, and make them land better and land deeper and resonate more with the audience. So we'll use Roman rhetoric for that. I've got a video coming out soon explaining a bit. But you know, it just touches base with a few of the Roman rhetorical devices you can use to highlight those points. And then everything else, that's not a speech there. We have a few important points. The way we make it a speech, and one that actually naturally flows, one that is authentic to us, one that allows us to speak to our audience so they can get the most from it, is we need to bridge these gaps with our natural speaking flow. Those are simply bridges, all right? So here it would be the story. We'll use bullet points to simply guide our ideas and deliver the story which we know, because we've lived it, we've journaled about it, we know what our story is. Oh yeah, so it will be a few bullet points. It will be Valentine's V-Day, primary school, teddy bear. And I immediately know what story I have to say. Oh yeah, the day I went to Valentine's Day, got my heart broken, I was gonna ask the girl I'd like to be my Valentine, it didn't work out, blah, blah, blah. That's the story. And then you need to remember you simply just use the story to lead up to the important point. You use Roman rhetoric to highlight it. Another thing, then you'll have a few bullet points here to guide your thinking. What was the message? Love isn't a verb. No, love isn't a noun, it's a verb. Then I forgot what the points would be now, but it would be, oh yeah, later that day I found my grandmother, blah, blah, blah. You know, and then it leads to this study, and then it leads to the psychology of love, then it leads to Shakespeare quote, then it leads to blah, blah, blah. And since that's the ending, I won't have a bridge there. But you get the idea. So we're trying to go and highlight the whole page and remember everything, but we really just need that. And what this 3 important points is, and bridging the gap with our natural speaking flow and bullet points, that allows us to speak the same way we would at the dinner table. And yes, for now, it's not going to be as good as if we had intentionally practiced our public speaking skills with a coach for 100 hours. You know, that's the things we work on here. If I kept using filler words and said you know, if highlighting the whole page, but there's only 3 important points, that's going to come up. If I keep using ums and ahs, that's going to come up. If I keep stuttering, that's going to come up, because we're using our natural speaking flow. And if we're afraid of that, it's good reason that we're scared of that, because that's the actual underlying problem. If this was medicine, that would be the root cause. We don't have to go and memorize all this bullshit. Excuse my French. What we need is to address the root cause here. The root cause is not that we're we're trying to cover it up by remembering the whole speech. And yeah, cool, that'll work. If you're saying your speech tomorrow, brother, memorize the speech, say tomorrow, do the best you can. But if we're talking about actually improving here and getting better, improving skills, that is how you address it. It is root cause. Bullet points, and we have to improve our baseline for speaking, our conversational skills. Now, there's no humans in this room here, but it doesn't have to be a conversation. It doesn't have to be a conversation for it to involve our conversational skills. So if we can just bring out the natural conversational element to our speaking, we naturally gain eye contact with the people we speak to. We naturally speak to them. We naturally connect to them, resonate with them. Does that make sense here? So firstly, we're speaking way too big. We want to almost dumb it down, simplify it, speaking the words which we are comfortable with. Then we end up reciting, remembering it, just standing there, and good morning, and oh yeah, top of the morning, because we're in Ireland. It's things like that. We just keep trying to remember things which isn't natural to us. So by trying to make it more natural, we bring out, yes, we can bring out our flaws, but if we can work on those flaws, which are the underlying problem here, we end up speaking and resonating, becoming better speakers, maintaining eye contact with our audience. Don't worry, I'll give you more practical tips, short-term tips, which you can use here for your speech tomorrow, but this is the underlying problem here. Another point is, okay, this way you're actually speaking or reciting. Oh yeah, this one is good. This one's good. This one's practical as well. So this is largely where the problems stem from. Let me just erase this. Now I'm going to give you a bit more practical tips you can do to actually improve here. And while I wipe this board, this is a good time to mention, I speak about practice here. If you're just watching the videos, that's great. If you're just making notes, that's even better. But above all, you need to be practicing. You need to be going out into the arena and speaking, getting uncomfortable, writing, getting better, improving, seeing what works, what doesn't, what's natural to you, what's not, seeing where your flaws lie so you can actually address them and improve. And there's many different ways you can do this. Joining Toastmasters, public speaking clubs, even just putting yourself out there. Or you can check the link in the description and I'll help you out for free. I have some storytelling notes I can give you. I'm currently making some Roman rhetoric ones. And we can do some unprepared speeches together. Check the link. It's probably worthwhile because I've got time and I can help you and it's free. So if we move to a bit more practical things we can apply here. This one's good. I actually really like this. Let me first write practical problem. Now it's practical. Oh yeah, alliteration. Is simply look for lovers. And I don't mean lovers like romance. I mean the people who are responding to you with love. Not necessarily love, but positively, all right? So I have this meeting. And I have to come. It's a large rectangular table like this. There's people there. There's an accountant dude there. And I get up and I come and I stand around here and I speak to everyone. Blah, 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 blah. A lot of them are on their laptops. A lot of them are in suits, very formal. A lot of them are a bit more reserved. And obviously, naturally, when we perceive the room a certain way, we tend to mirror what we perceive the room to be. We mirror them, but if we come with all this light and energy, they mirror us. But I believe the room to be slightly cold and reserved, so naturally I become a bit stiff. But then I start delivering my report, and you know me, I always begin with a story. I bring a bit more warmth to the room, and a bit more of my Luca personality. And everyone still kind of stays on their laptops, and they're still a bit cold and not really necessarily paying attention to what I have to say, except for one lady, not typing on a laptop. She's looking at me with all her attention. She's smiling and she's nodding. And I look at her as I deliver my presentation or my report, and I almost harness that energy and I feed off of it and I build on it. And by the end of my presentation, my jokes throughout it land a bit better. I pause a bit longer. I build a bit more comfort with the moment. By the end of the presentation, I wish I could say everyone, not everyone. This accountant dude, it's pretty hard to impress. He's the leader of the meeting, or he ran the meetings. Except for him. Everyone was looking at me with warmth, smiled a few times. I just completely changed the environment of the room. And it's all simply because what really changed here was because of that one lady. She was warm. She was receptive. She was kind. She was nodding. And so, yes, I tried to make eye contact with everyone else, but there was nothing to look at. Or if it was, they were really mean and it really didn't give me a nice vibe. So what I did, I didn't just stare at her the whole time, but I essentially spoke to her. As if, imagine you were the lady. And I'm speaking to you, delivering a presentation, a report here. I look back here, I look back there, I look back here, I look back at you, but I'm speaking to you. So I was speaking to the lady and I was feeding off of that positive energy. So what I mean when I say look for lovers is look for people that love what you're saying. Look for the people that are nodding. Look for the ones that are smiling. The ones that are laughing at your jokes. Not necessarily, hopefully not at you, haha, lol. The ones that are nodding, the ones that are smiling, the ones that are receptive, the ones that are positive, the ones that bring good vibes, the ones that have a good energy. Good energy. They have warmth. All right, feed off of that, use that, build that, and talk to them. And hopefully, as you build on that, you gain more energy from that. There's more life in the way you speak. And naturally, everyone else will follow. Because they mirror you, you mirror them. All right, that's a very important concept I want you to fathom in general. For now, though, look for the lovers. Not everyone's going to look at you with receptivity. You get the word, receptiveness. But what you want to do is find a few people that are giving in, buying into what you have to say. Look at them, speak to them, feed off of their energy. All right. Someone sat right next to the seminar room and it's giving me the ick. Now, some more practical things. Number 2, I had to prepare for this public speaking competition. And there's unprepared and a prepared section. And I had practiced unprepared and I was getting better at that. But the prepared was the main part. That was the meat and potatoes. The unprepared, that was more like a salad, but you need a good salad, you know? And so naturally, I had a really good speech. Okay, that's not natural, but I had a speech which I was really well prepared for, all right? You know, it was a big competition. I wanted to come to it with the best I had. So I had a speech, fairly well written, but really well memorized. I knew the whole thing. I wrote it out I knew it word for word, all right? I knew the pause, I knew when to stop, I knew the comma, I knew that was actually a semicolon, not a colon. I knew the ins and out of it because I wrote it and I really wanted it to go well. And so I had a teacher who was essentially my judge and my coach. And she helped me get better. She helped me win the competition with this speech. And what I had these flashcards in front of me. And as I spoke, I would stare at her or look at her as I changed the flashcards. And it gave her this almost ick. It gave this robotic vibe, which was almost too prepared. And it wasn't natural. Bottom line, it wasn't natural. And we don't want that. We want natural warmth, natural charm, natural charisma. We want speaking to appear as if it's on the spot. When you look at people, we don't want it to be rehearsed. We want it to be natural. And so when I was speaking to her, I would look at her in the eyes and I would change my flashcards because I knew exactly what word this one ended and the next one began on. And there was no point for me to even look. And I could just maintain and keep this eye contact the whole time. And what she told me to do was to, no, break the eye contact in order to improve this, or to, better the appearance of this natural flow. Glance down at your flashcard, change it. Glance at your audience, change it. Glance there and then back at the judge. So what we want is not 24/7. We don't want constant eye contact. Why? Because when you're sitting at the dinner table, talking to your mom, your dad, your cousins, the annoying little cousins, or maybe not them, you're speaking naturally, conversationally, with words you're comfortable with. You're not staring at them in the eyes. When you speak, you're looking at the different family members. You're looking down at the table a little bit. Looking down doesn't scream insecurity, it's just a natural movement. You look up a bit and you think, and then you look back at the end of your sentence, at the end of your point. And that's completely natural. You change flashcards, you change slides on the PowerPoint, you look at the whiteboard a bit, then you look back. So don't hold it 24/7. Now the question is, when do you break it and when do you look? So let me speak on that a bit. Obviously, you want to look back when you finish off a sentence. You want to look back when you have an important point. You want to look back when you want something to land. Because it's almost like you're making sure to them that you see them and they see you and that they hear this. It's like when I look at you, you know I'm speaking to you. And when you know that I'm speaking to you, it helps me with my message land better for you. All right? I don't know if I put that the best way. When I look at you and I say something, you know it's meant for you. All right? So when I have a message and I want to deliver that and give it to you, in that moment I realized love was not some noun, but it was a verb. When I look at you and I say that, you know it's meant for you, to be heard by you. So that's why when we end a sentence, we end a point, that's when we hold eye contact. And then throughout that, there's times when we can break eye contact. So I'll write it down here. When to break? Question mark. So there's two main things you can do here, which you can go and practice and try out the next time you speak. It is simply, there's times where we'll act like we're thinking when we speak. Intentionally look up as if you're thinking. Maybe squint your eyes a bit in thought. That's a very natural gesture, very natural cue, and we want to replicate that. Even if it's not necessarily natural, because we're preparing for it, we can always come across as natural by simply doing it. So what that can look like is, I had a story where I was talking about how my big brother left for university overseas, and it was not easy saying goodbye. And so I had this, at the end of my speech, this realization where, to me, what hurt most was not letting go of my big brother, but it was never getting the chance to say goodbye. I didn't execute it perfectly there, but you could kind of see that, to me, what hurt most was not letting go of my big brother, looking there, but it was never getting the chance to say goodbye. So it's almost like I'm thinking and wondering and looking for the answer. What hurt most? What was it? I'm looking up to the skies for the answer. I don't know. And then I find it and I look back at you. And same thing, what hurt most was not letting go of my big brother. Again, at the end of that point, I look at you. I'm thinking. So when we think, that's when we can break it. And you want to say, look up in thought. Another very natural cue, well, I've used this very effectively. I use it and it's very effective. I found it to be very effective. It works quite well. Write it down. It's when you laugh before the joke. It doesn't take away from the joke. It simply just gives it a trampoline so it can bounce and reach even greater heights. So, you know that Valentine's Day story I mentioned? There's this one where I'm finally going to ask the girl I like to be my Valentine. And before I can ask her, we make eye contact and she looks at me and I look at her, and I notice the sun's glare in her eyes and this little, the hairs, the strand of hair covering her forehead and this little gap between her teeth. And she looks me up and down and I think, yeah, this is the moment. And she slowly begins opening her mouth and she says, Luca, you're kind of fat. And the crowd really laughed there, and it was a nice moment. I fed off of that energy and it was very warm and people liked it. But that little giggle before, Luca, you're kind of fat, that aids in the joke landing better. Let me think of another example on the spot if I can. Come on, Luca, the world's watching. Oh yeah. So I was watching this one soccer match with my dad, and I raised the stakes throughout the story. I'm saying, the score's 1-1. We're trailing a goal. It's a corner kick. We send our goalkeeper up. The ball's soaring through the air. The goalkeeper's off his line. Our striker jumps up to head it into the back of the net. Everything seems perfect for us to score, but the TV freezes. It's that little giggle, that little... It's almost like so funny I can barely say it with a straight face. I can barely keep it in. It's so funny. And then when you have that giggle, it's like... the TV freezes. Everyone laughs. Oh, what the heck? Come on, man. Really? It freezes? No way. People really love consistency. And if you can just set the tone, they'll reciprocate. So simply just giggle before the joke. And if you're like, bro, what does this have to do with eye contact? You look at them, and before the goalkeeper's off his line, the striker jumps up, everything seems perfect for us to score. And then the TV freezes. So as you giggle, then is a good time to look down. Up, I've never found it to be that natural. I've always found down, because it's almost giggling and you're looking down in almost shyness, because it's so funny. You're breaking character to laugh. The TV freezes. Get better at that. That's where you can slightly look down a little. That's where you can look up a little. Don't obviously go over the top here, but you get the idea. So you want to look for lovers. Look at people who are reciprocating good energy, or not even reciprocating, who have good energy. Use it, feed off of it, spread it. Where the problem lies with eye contact is it's not natural. Eye contact is a very natural human expression, gesture, cue. When we're happy, we tend to really get these eye wrinkles, and that's what we look like. We don't really have eye contact courses and classes, because it's a natural thing, natural to humans, and we know how to read them because we're so used to them. So all we want to do is we want to create this natural playing field where we can express them how they're meant to be expressed. And so the way we do that is by avoiding the reciting, by avoiding trying to level up, by avoiding speaking with all these fancy words that we have to remember how to pronounce. Are we using them in the right context? Are we speaking it the right way? Avoid that. Natural flow. We want important points. Boom, boom, boom. Bridge it with a natural flow. All right. And then what you want is a bit of practical things we can do here. We want to look for the lovers. Look for the people that are giving us good energy. Speak to them. Feed off of that. And then when you build confidence with them, when they're nodding and laughing and saying, yep, that's a valid joke, then you want to, boom, maybe look at the mean guy, the mean accountant dude, huh? Then you maybe want to look at George over there, who's, who's been frowning because he got no play on Valentine's Day. Then you want to, branch out. And if that goes to shite, Look back at Stacy over there, nodding. I like your energy. There's no one in that chair. And then what you want is to remember that it's not 24/7. Eye contact is not always strong. It's a natural thing, and we use it to highlight our words. When we speak, I'm not looking at you, brother, but I'm speaking. And then when I have an important point, getting at the end of my sentence, it's not 24/7. When you have an important point, full stop, you can always circle your full stops and put an eye contact, EC, eye contact. When you have an, because what that does is it signals, I'm looking at you, this is for you. I want to make sure you can hear me and my words are heard here. This is for you. It's not 24/7. And then when to break it, when you think, look up. When you giggle, look down. And then when you want the joke to land, look back. It's really simple. Eye contact is very natural. It's not always, but it's not never. And you need to know when to give it and when to take it away. Hopefully this clears it up. But before you leave, here's what I want you to do now. I've given you some theory. I've given you some knowledge, hopefully. Hopefully it was useful. Let me know down below, ? And I need you to go and practice this now. So take one of these things, look for lovers or giggle a bit before a joke. One of them, not all of them, I'll get a bit overwhelmed, and go and implement it next time you speak. If you have a speech tomorrow, great, try it out. If you're speaking to a friend before you say the joke, try giggle a bit. Or be a bit more conscious of when you're explaining something, maybe think up. And then when you get the answer, look back. Take one of them, maybe it's this one, not 24/7, and just focus on that. Maybe record yourself speaking, trying to implement it, trying to practice, looking away from the camera, trying to appear more natural, and then looking back. What our eyes are is they are a highlighter. Use them to highlight important words. If you go highlight everything, it doesn't really work here. So take one of these things, implement it in your speech. Now, and let me know how it goes. Take care.